I just have my natural hair and then I put a few curls on top and I feel like I look like my mom in the 80s. Hello book besties and welcome back to another video. Let me check the date. You guys, this is my last video of 2026. And I'm so excited for next year and all of the videos that we are going to be getting into then. Today's video is going to be an end of year book review or the end of year book tag. I always love looking back at the books that I read throughout the year and remembering the things that I read and the stories that I was a part of and the communities that I was able to find through the stories that I was a part of. It's honestly just such a fun thing for me to go through, take a look at everything. It's going to be a fun video. I have a lot of questions that we're gonna go through. Also, if you're noticing that my quality looks a little different, that is because my sweet husband got me a new video camera and this is the first time I'm able to use it and I absolutely love it. And I feel like the quality is just so much better. So far I'm really liking this. I will say I keep looking at myself in the viewfinder and I need to stop doing that. Let's jump into these questions. How many books have you read this year? So far I've read 29 books. I'm in the middle of my 30th book. I'm very happy because 30 was my reading goal for this year. I didn't have a strong start to this year with being mega pregnant, having some complications with that pregnancy and having my baby. So honestly, the fact that I got 30 books this year is a score for me. What was your favorite book of the year? Okay, that is like such a hard question because I feel like I really have read so many amazing books. Off the bat, I'll just tell you about a few of my favorites. At the beginning of the year, I read Sunrise on the Reaping, and that book absolutely tore my heart out and ripped it into a billion pieces. Haymitch really caught no breaks. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that one fell a little flat for me, and this one kind of redeemed prequels. And that's saying a lot because I still really enjoyed The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, so I don't know. That was a favorite. I also read all of the Fourth Wing books this year. Iron Flame and Onyx Storm weren't my absolute favorite, but I did love Fourth Wing. Oh my gosh, I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal. Loved that one. That was also one of my favorites. The Wedding People, I feel like I've talked about that book so much, but it really did make a huge impact on me this year, so that also has to be a favorite. I loved all of those so much. Okay, I think I'm gonna do a favorite per genre that I read because I think trying to do like one favorite book is gonna be too hard for me. Fourth Wing was my favorite fantasy book that I read. Dystopian, Sunrise on the Reaping. Romance, I'm gonna say The Bodyguard by Catherine Sinner. I absolutely loved it. Literary, The Wedding People. What was your least favorite book of the year? Oh, actually, I already know. I think my least favorite of the year was Skyshade by Alex Astor. And I hate saying that because I really do enjoy the other Lightlark books, but I feel like they're kind of going downhill. Like, I really loved Lightlark and Nightbane, but Skyshade was like such a miss for me. So that was probably my least favorite of the year, which it wasn't even a horrible book, just because I don't feel like it spoke to me as much as the other books did. What's a book that surprised you in a good or bad way? Nothing Like the Movies. I'm gonna say Nothing Like the Movies. And that's because I heard a lot of not good reviews about this book, which made me so scared to read it for the longest time. But then I read it and I'm pretty sure I gave it 4.5 or 5 stars. Like, I really loved that book. So I will say that I was happily surprised by how much I loved it. You guys, there's this dog that's going on a walk right now and he's losing his mind, and I know for a fact Ranger's gonna start crying. He just wants to go play with him. We don't know that dog. You're gonna hang out with your friend this weekend though. What was your favorite new to you author? Catherine Center, hands down. There's no competition, Catherine Center. I love her book and I can't even tell you how I just want to buy all of them now. What's a book you wish you'd picked up sooner? Other than Nothing Like the Movies, because I kind of just mentioned that I put that one off for a long time and I wish I hadn't. I would say, I'm gonna say Five Survive by Holly Jackson. I don't read a ton of mystery usually, and I want to get more into mystery books, especially like in fall time, because I feel like that's a really great time for those mystery books. So I'm gonna say Five Survive because I always forget that I like mystery books and then I don't read them. I'm pretty sure that one's been out for a long time now, and I wish I would have read that sooner. What was my most read genre this year? Okay, for that we're going over to Fable because they do such a good job at the statistics. Okay, my most read genre this year was romance with 14 books. Close after that was fantasy with 7, young adult with 7, those were tied. Literary fiction with 6, thrillers with 4, and then I'm currently reading My Friends by Frederick Bachman for a book club that I'm in. So that will be another literary fiction, which will have it tied then with fantasy and young adult. But definitely most was romance with 14 books. Did you complete any reading goals or challenges? Yes, I completed my reading goal for 2025 on Goodreads. Challenges, I think that I kept really well to my TBRs that I set myself like for the months. And so I'm also gonna say yes for that. Something that I do wanna try getting into next year though is reading more nonfiction books, which I've mentioned before. So I wanna challenge myself to read like a nonfiction book a month. What's one book that lived up to the hype? Probably Fourth Wing, honestly. I feel like that one definitely lived up to the hype, which that being said was a lot of hype, but I think it was well deserved. What's a book that didn't live up to the hype? Honestly, this one might be a hot take, but I feel like I've seen everyone raving about All the Light We Cannot See, and I enjoyed it. Like, I think I gave it maybe 3.5, 4 stars. That's still a good rating. But at the same time, like, I feel like I've read other historical fictions that have just been so much more moving to me. So it's not that this was not a good book, but I think I saw a ton of hype for it that I don't know if I fully felt when I read it. Who was your favorite fictional character of the year? You guys, that's a good question. Okay, I'm gonna give 2 answers for this. One's like funny and one's gonna be more serious. The first one is going to be Emily Walker from Beg, Borrow, or Steal. I love the Rome, Kentucky series. She reminds me of my best friend, so obviously I'm going to love her. And I also feel like I see a lot of myself in her as well. But obviously me and my best friend are very similar, so there's gonna be some things that I think are similar. Second favorite fictional character is Marcellus from Remarkably Bright Creatures, who is the octopus. And I loved him. He was just like the funniest character and brought so much life to that story in such a fun and unexpected way. What's a book that made you cry or feel deeply? I'm gonna give this one to The Wedding People because I feel like there's definitely a few books that made me cry this year, but I don't think there's any other book that made me feel as deeply. There's so many quotes with immense depth in that book that really spoke to me. What's a book that made you laugh out loud? I don't know how many of these are like super like laugh out loud funny books. I'm gonna say Fake Skating by Lynn Painter. I feel like there was like a few things that happened that were like bantery that like definitely had me giggling. Plus I love anything from Lynn Painter. I've already talked about Nothing Like the Movies, but Fake Skating was also amazing and probably another one of my favorite books of the year. Favorite book cover of the year? Honestly, I feel like I read some really beautiful books, but I'm going to say The Summer of Broken Rules. I feel like that cover just beautifully encaptures the vibe of the book. It was such a fun summery read and a beautiful cover. And then also I'm gonna say Remarkably Bright Creatures because that is stunning. What book or reading moment defined your year? That is a really good question. What reading moment defined my year? Honestly, I know I keep talking about the same book in this video, but I'm honestly gonna say The Wedding People because I really do think that that book taught me so much about myself that I think it defined the things that I want to work on and the person who I want to continue to grow to become. That might be a cheesy answer, but if you think that's a cheesy answer, I think you should read The Wedding People, and then it doesn't seem as cheesy anymore. Did your reading taste change this year? I think I mentioned this briefly, but I think I'm reading a lot more literary fiction that teaches me about other people's interests and lives, and it teaches me about myself along the way. Not saying that I don't still enjoy my romance and fantasy books. Reading is my preferred form of entertainment, that and YouTube. So I feel like I still want to be entertained by my books, which is perfect in my romance and fantasy books. But I love being entertained and learning something and reading some beautiful passages along the way, which I'm noticing more now with these literary fiction books. I think also with the literary fiction, what's really interesting about it, there's so much depth to people's lives, and you'll never really know the extent unless you're able to dive into them and live in those moments for a little while. And I feel like that's what I get when I read literary fiction. This year I read about a lot of different topics and experiences this year that have really touched me and got me interested in a lot of new things, like cooking and art and science, like things that normally aren't much into my interests. I've been able to kind of step into those shoes and become a lot more interested in all of these different topics and grow my knowledge in all those different areas. Was there a book that pushed you out of your comfort zone? I'm gonna give this one to 2 books, which is Beautiful Boy, and I'm gonna give this to Even This, and I'm saying these 2 just because they're nonfiction books, and those are already kind of out of my comfort zone, but I'm proud of myself for reading them, and I really enjoyed both. What was your favorite reading setting or memory? I have to give that one to The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because I read that in LA, and the book is set in like old glamorous Hollywood LA, and that is like the hotel I was staying in was a very like old glamour hotel, and I feel like I was just really engulfed in this book while I was reading it through my own setting around me while I was reading about the setting in the book. It was just a beautiful experience. If you did not see that, I would go check out my reading vlog of reading where my book takes place, and I did a whole video on it. It was such a fun experience, so I would have to give it to that one. A book that felt very you. A book that felt very me that I read this year is honestly going to be Picking Daisies on Sunday. So there was just so many things about Daniela that really reminded me of myself, and some of them were not very positive, honestly. Like, I feel like she doesn't talk very highly about herself sometimes, and that's something that I'm really trying to work on, is giving myself more grace and being my own biggest fan. Her thought process a lot of the time is very similar to how I think sometimes, and reading that in another character kind of helped me realize like, okay, I really do need to like stop doing this or be nicer to myself. So it was very me in that way, but in a way that was kind of eye-opening, helping me see myself through a different light and encouraging me to improve. Those are all my questions for my end of year book tag today. I hope you enjoyed watching. As for 2026, I think my reading goals are 1 nonfiction book a month. I want to read like 36 to 40 books in 2026, and I'm very excited. Honestly, I'm like craving romance books, so I want to read a lot more of those, and I even have some on my shelves that have not been read yet, so I'm very excited. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next year.